Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Friday?
Always happy on a Friday.
We got a lot to talk about. Breaking news that broke about 2 hours before the show. It's going to be fun to talk about. Contracts. This is going to be a very contract-focused episode. A lot of contracts going on, a lot of question marks about contracts, a lot of rumors. But let's jump into the breaking news of today's show, which is indeed that the Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins have agreed to a 4-year, $212.4 million contract today with $167 million guaranteed. Now Tua, we're going to bring up the graphic right now, Tua becomes the third highest paid quarterback, if you include the tie, obviously, between Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. He's the third highest paid quarterback, about $100,000 more than Jared Goff. So he signs a pretty massive deal. It is the highest ever in Dolphins franchise history. And by the way, I'm just going to point this out here just for a little tidbit. Dan Marino had $51 total million. Year one, Tua is making more than that already. So there we go. But I want to know, are you surprised that the Dolphins would pay Tua this large sum of money and give him a 4-year extension?
It's the largest 4-year contract in NFL history at $212 million. I am a little surprised, actually. I predicted that they would let him play out the year, and they would maybe franchise tag him next year. They had that option, but they didn't do it. I guess they love him. The GM said, Chris Greer said the Dolphins are strong believers in Tua. So they proved it. They stepped up with a huge contract. It's short of the $55 million that Lawrence and Burrow got to lead the league with the two top contracts. But hey, $53.1 million is nothing to sneeze at, particularly with $167 million of it guaranteed. You know, his stats in 23-24 were outstanding: 4,600 yards, 272 yards per game, 69.3% completion rate, 29 TDs. 101.1 quarterback rating. That's really good. There's a 97.1 quarterback rating for his career. It's tied for 12th all time, ahead of Steve Young and Peyton Manning, which surprises me that he's ahead of Peyton Manning. That stat may not be one of the best to compare all-time QBR. I'm not sure that's a great stat. I think I would still put Peyton Manning ahead of Tua at this point in his career. I mean, he hadn't played anywhere near the number of years that Peyton Manning's played, so we'll see if he can have the longevity that Peyton Manning had and see where his QBR might be then. The Dolphins had the number one offense in 2023-24. He was a big part of that. He's lucky to have two outstanding wide receivers, maybe the best in the league, and Tyreek Hill, and not far from it, and Jason Waddle. Those guys help him out a lot. Some people think he was robbed as the comeback player of the year, given the kind of injuries he had last year, to be able to come back, be in the MVP discussion for most of the year. Joe Flacco wound up winning that award, which I don't think that was such a bad choice either. I mean, Joe Flacco was sitting on his couch before he got called by the Browns, and he wound up going to the playoffs. So he had a pretty good year too. But I could see people being upset by Tua not getting that award. I'm not sure he gets all of the credit that he deserves. I mean, he was picked ahead of Justin Herbert. If we go back to 2020, he was the 5th pick, and Herbert was right after him, which at the time was considered a terrible pick. Now he's a lot closer to Herbert, I think. In fact, he had a better season than Herbert did this past year. He's been injury prone. I mean, he had a hip injury in college. He had a rib injury in 2021, limited him to 13 games. He had the concussions in 2022. Although the team kind of let him down there, they let him play after he had a concussion, and the next week he got a bad one. So they thought there was talk that he was going to retire because of those concussions. He didn't. He came back, had that fantastic year. They had the top offense of 401 yards per game. Now I say the focus shifts to Jordan Love to see what kind of contract he's going to get. But I'm interested to hear what you have to think about it. What you think about this?
I have zero problem with the Dolphins signing Tua to an extension. It's a 4-year deal. I don't have a problem with the length of it at all. To me, that doesn't really matter. Jared Goff has a 4-year deal, although obviously he is older than Tua Tagovailoa. What I do have a problem with is the purpose of it, right? I have no problem with them signing it, but what's it going to get you? Same thing with Dak Prescott. He's going for $60 million, and even there was something I saw today that if he just is patient enough, Dak could make upwards of $70 million annually. I don't believe that whatsoever, but the fact that the number 6 is getting thrown out when it comes to Dak Prescott, I got a problem with that. But what's the point, right? What is Tua going to give you that no other quarterback can? Because obviously you could point to yesterday when they were during training camp, and then all of a sudden the defense was dominating on the offense. That's what Cameron Wolf said on NFL Network, that Tua didn't participate in the second day of practice, but there was a much different Miami offense and the defense dominated. Well, that would make sense when you have a legitimate starting quarterback in Tua and then backup Mike White running the offense. There is a massive difference. Tua is a starter, Mike White is a backup. So I would kind of understand why a backup quarterback can't run the offense as efficiently as now a $53.1 million quarterback can. But I thought that Tua, just because I'm not paying him for 7/10 of a year, I'm paying him for 100% of the year, that I would give him $49 million. I will commend the Dolphins, though, on not giving him a all of a sudden market-breaking deal like the Jaguars did when they gave Trevor Lawrence a tying contract of $55 million a year on average, tied with Joe Burrow. One made a Super Bowl, the other one playoff game. Tua, on the other hand, I can understand that. 53.1. I'm glad the Dolphins decided not to break the bank when it comes to his performance over the course of an entire season, because he doesn't earn it. He didn't deserve to break the QB market. And I'm going to bring up this graphic again because I do think it's important. Because the whole point of paying him this much money and give him this extension is because you think with Mike McDaniel you could win playoff games. And by the way, the Dolphins hold the longest playoff win drought. The last win back in 2001 during the 2000-2001 season. The Dolphins have back-to-back wildcard appearances and back-to-back losses. Although the one in 2022, this close to beating Josh Allen. The other one, the Chiefs took care of them easily. But let's bring up this graphic, and I always bring it up. Against teams when it's 45 degrees or below, I call this sweater weather. Because here in New York, it's what you do. You put on a sweatshirt, and you do everything you normally do when it's 45 degrees, or just what else you have to do. You put on a sweatshirt. Tua's horrible. Like this is a bad quarterback. 55% completion percentage, 241 yards. I don't really have a problem with that. 8 touchdowns, 9 picks, a 75 passer rating. That's not $53 million. But I'll give him credit. From games 12 and before, he's a tremendous quarterback. He's a very, very good quarterback. I would bridge him right in the top 10, maybe. He's definitely from 9 to 13. That's his range. He's not a top 5 quarterback. He's not better than C.J. Stroud already. C.J. Stroud, what he did with the Texans, I think is absolutely incredible. He's around the 9 to 13 range. I got no problem with it. But I'm not paying him for 70% of a season. I want to pay him for 100% of the season. And add on top of that, Tyreek Hill needs an extension. You need to upgrade your offensive line, which currently is ranked 25th. Your defensive line took a massive hit losing Christian Wilkins. I think that could be a problem in the future if you're trying to build around Tua, and all of a sudden these guys become very, very expensive. Also, OBJ, the guy you signed to be a wide receiver 3, he's on the PUP list right now. Not a great start to a potential future with OBJ as a Miami Dolphin. But I do think eventually over the course of time, and it may be this year, it may be next year, but I do think within Tua's contract, they will win a singular playoff game. Because I do think there will be a gimme. The only problem is, though, Tua has not been able to beat Josh Allen enough to surpass the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East. So they will never get a home playoff game, which means you'll never be playing in 65 to 75 degree weather, which Tua excels at. You'll always be playing in a Kansas City, in a Cincinnati, in a Buffalo. And those types of temperatures, Tua becomes a fish out of water, a frozen block, a glacier. Just bad performance. Because it's Miami. You want to play in 75 degree weather. When you go up into the 20s, 30s, and 40s, Tua freezes up. So that's the only problem I have with it. He's a great quarterback from games 12 and before. But 13 and on, he's not that good of a quarterback. He has an 8-9 career record. And by the way, in that time frame, it's the only other time frame he has double-digit interceptions. Games 1 to 4, he has 7. 5 to 8, he has 8. 9 to 12, he has 6. Games 13 and on, he's 8-9 and has 16 interceptions and 19 touchdowns. nearly a 1-to-1 when it matters the most. And we talk about this. How about late last year? He finished off last year 1-5. 1-5 against eventual postseason teams. The only win that they got was on a field goal, a 29-yard field goal against the Dallas COwboys on Christmas Eve.
Oh, those are interesting stats. I would say
It
might not always be the cold. It could be that you're playing at the last 4 or 5 games of the season. Everybody's stepping up their game because they want to make the playoffs.
It depends. If you're playing playoff hopefuls, sure.
Yeah.
But against the Buffalo
Generally,
Bills,
they're going to. I mean, they can generally play the Bills in the last 5 games of the season.
But if the Bills already clinched their spot, the only reason why the Bills never let up was because they were trying to actually beat the Dolphins out to win the AFC.
I mean,
the
they played the
had that
Dolphins.
right there.
They played the Dolphins at the Dolphins in the game that they won at the end of the season last year. That meant the most to the Dolphins, really.
Yes, because
it meant a ton to both teams.
Bills.
It meant a ton to both teams. The winner won the division. Made a big difference in where they wound up playing. And for the Dolphins, it was a disaster. They wound up having to go to Kansas City. The weather was miserable, and the Dolphins played miserably.
Absolutely. And by the way, yes, the only reason why the Bills never let up was because those games late in the season, they were trying to come back and beat the Dolphins out for the AFC East crown. The Dolphins threw it away. In their last, let's go. If we're including the playoffs, the last 6 games, they went 2-4. With losses against the Titans, Ravens, Bills, and obviously the Chiefs.
How'd they manage to lose to the Titans, huh? That's hard
Will
to believe.
Levis. And by the way, I think Tyreek Hill was out that game, which then sparked even more controversy of, well, is it Tyreek Hill or is it Tua? Which I think is a big question because I don't think Tyreek Hill already tried to break the bank, and that got him traded away from Kansas City. The Dolphins got him for, I think, 5 first-round picks, something like that. I think the Chiefs won that. And in the moment, obviously, people are going to say, no, there's no way. I think in retrospect, I do think the Chiefs were able to win that trade. When it comes to the Dolphins, Tua's going to need him. Tua's big leap into dominance, I would say, is when they drafted Jalen Waddle, when they got Tyreek Hill. And not only that, let's throw this out here. Brian Flores didn't want him. Kept wanting to put in Ryan Fitzpatrick. GM didn't want him. Tampered with Tom Brady. So I think that there's not a lot of love for Tua, but because, especially if this draft class had a Caleb Williams, if this draft class had a Drake May or any one of the top college quarterbacks, Michael Penix, Bonix, whoever you want to throw out there, this upcoming draft class doesn't really have it. So there's not a replacement you could throw out there where it's like, okay, yeah, we can get that guy in the draft and just let Tua do whatever he wants to do. We'll trade him away, get a first-round pick for him, and we're going to be able to draft our next franchise quarterback. There's not really any of that in this draft. If there was a Caleb Williams out there, I'm sure they would try to trade Tua. If there was a Drake May that they fell in love with, I'm sure trading Tua would be on the board because he gives you 70% really good and then the 30% when it matters the most, and that's a big knock on Lamar. Lamar wasn't available for a large part of December and especially January, which means that if you do make the playoffs, because Lamar will be spectacular through large parts early in the season, that you may make the playoffs, he might not be there, which was already the case against the Cincinnati Bengals, was it 2 years ago at this point?
Well, I don't think the Dolphins are going to the Super Bowl this year.
No, I don't either.
They're the number 12 power ranked team, and that number 12 ain't going to get there.
Well, currently in their roster, this is how the breakdown goes. Tua is ranked as the 11th quarterback. They have the 25th offensive line, 4th best receiver group, 3rd best running back group, 25th best front seven, 3rd best secondary, and 7th best head coach. I don't disagree with any of that. Their offensive line needs a lot of work. As Patriots fans, we all know Isaiah Wynn. He's dealing with an injury. Terran Armstead, when healthy, is one of the best left tackles in the game. Overall, their offensive line is not that great. Health is a massive issue with them. Tua's health could be a massive issue, although his jiu-jitsu, learning how to fall, again, you're probably not going to get hurt when you're expecting to get hit. It's the unexpected hits that are really costly.
Well, they minimized those last year for him.
Because he got the ball out, I think, the quickest in the NFL.
Yeah.
I'll also point this out because it has to be said. He does have a pretty extensive injury history. Going into the NFL.
I mentioned that.
Going into the NFL, he was already dealing with an injury, and then he's had a back injury, a hip injury, and 3 concussions. He thought about retiring after that last situation with, was it within a 10-day span, he had 2 confirmed concussions and then another head injury that based on, his gross motor skills, It looked like he got another concussion. They called it 3 head injuries and 2 concussions. I think it's okay to say 3 concussions. But, yeah, people saying, oh, yeah, well, look at the offense without Tua. Yeah, it's Mike White running the offense. If it's not Mike White, it's Skylar Thompson. If it's not Skylar Thompson, it's Gavin Hardinson. Obviously, Tua's better than all of those 3 quarterbacks combined. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's a 9 to 12, 13 ranked quarterback. But is he better? Let's go back to the contracts, because we did this before. He's not better than Joe Burrow. He's not better than Lamar Jackson. I think, truthfully, I don't think he's better than Jared Goff. Justin Herbert has been plagued by horrible defense and horrible coaching. Like I said, he has scored the most points in his first 3 years in NFL history. His defense has also given up the most points in that 3-year span.
He was drafted after Tua.
He was. And then Trevor Lawrence,
Tua got a bigger contract.
Trevor Lawrence, like the Deshaun Watson, is an outlier. We don't really base contracts around Trevor Lawrence, although it can affect how contracts are made, just like Deshaun Watson. When Lamar was trying to get a contract, everybody was talking with, he wants Deshaun Watson guaranteed money at the starting point. Now, that turned out not to be the case, but it can influence contracts. And I think a lot of people thought, well, if Trevor Lawrence got that deal, why can't Tua? And luckily, the Dolphins and Tua were able to come to an agreement, $53.1 million. It's not breaking the bank at all. It can cause some conflict down the line when you try to build up a better offensive line, a better defensive line, try to re-sign Tyreek Hill, try to give maybe Jalen Waddle another extension, or whatever the case may be. You cannot get insane amounts of talent like the Eagles can, like the 49ers can, like any one of these top-tier teams that are trying to get all these top-tier players and extend them if you're paying your quarterback that much.
Yeah. Well, after tax, it may wind up being the best contract there amongst all of them because he's in Florida and there's no state sales tax or no state income tax.
I think that it's going to be very difficult, and we really haven't seen it in recent history of a quarterback who's getting paid top 5 money win a Super Bowl. That just really doesn't happen because it doesn't allow you to get other types of players that you might need, other deficiencies on your team. Having that much money being given to one particular player at one particular position does not create enough openings generally to fill in other holes of your team. Tom Brady always took less. Mahomes, he could have gotten paid at the time probably $55 million because he went out, won Super Bowls, 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. He took less, and he keeps continuing to take less. He reconstructs his deal in order to create more cap space to sign better players.
They want that three-peat.
Obviously. I think anybody who had the opportunity would definitely do that. But I think that it's something that quarterbacks should be looking at. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit later, should Brock Purdy be doing that? But we'll talk about it later on the show. But speaking about quarterbacks and their contracts, let's get into our next one, because this is not good if you're a Dak fan, because Dak Prescott said recently, he talked to some media members, and he was asked about contract situation, as we all are. We're talking about the contract situation with Dak, and he had a very, very interesting quote. So take a listen.
Obviously, I want to be here. Talking about growing up, this is where I've become a man. So, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and when I'm gonna say it. I want to be here, but when you look up, all the great quarterbacks I watched played for other teams. So my point in saying that is that's not something to fear. That may be a reality for me one day, may not be my decision.
So do you think Dak's already looking at the future, looking at other quarterbacks around the league that he's looked up to and saying, well, Tom Brady, even Joe Montana, a couple of these top-tier quarterbacks in history, Peyton Manning, some of these top-tier quarterbacks, they moved on. Do you think this could be the last season that we see Dak Prescott in a Dallas COwboys uniform?
Well, it doesn't look like the contract's imminent, even though Jerry Jones says, the players play better with him. He makes teammates play at a higher level. There's no question about that. I'm his best fan, he says, but there's no imminent contract that's coming for him right now. So he doesn't fear signing elsewhere, although he may regret it if he goes to a team that's not doesn't have the tools like the Cowboys have, and is not going to be as competitive and will have a tougher time making the playoffs. I think Jerry Jones may look at look at the situation and say, well, he had 4,500 yards passing, is almost a 70% completion rate, 36 TDs, 9 interceptions during the regular season, and was in the MVP discussion. He's 2-5 in the playoffs. He lost to Green Bay in the playoffs last year. They were behind 48-16 in the fourth quarter. He had 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick 6. So Jerry Jones ain't getting any younger. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He may think, you know what, I can't get it done with Dak Prescott.
And I do think that is a major question mark. Now, what I think actually may hurt Dak is Tua's contract, because Tua was able to take less, even though this is his first massive extension. And he just led the league in passing yards, I believe. He was top tier the past couple of years in a bunch of very key passing stats, completion percentage, yards, TD to interception. Like, Tua did very well the past couple of years and still took less than what the new market has been set at. Dak Prescott is looking at $60 million. That's what's been reported. Dak says, I don't play for the money. I would play for free. Well, that's not the case at all. If you're not directly saying that you want $60 million, your agents are. And if they're your agents, and if you truly want to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and want to continue being their quarterback, tell your agents, hey, I'm fine with X number. Instead, we keep hearing $60 million. But what I do think is kind of fascinating is it's the same problem with Tua, except a little bit more so. Because we've seen much more Dak Prescott. He's been playing in the NFL since 2016. And there's been a common narrative, especially recently. Dak doesn't beat winning teams. And over his career, that has been the case. So let's bring up exactly how Dak has done, and especially in losses against these winning teams, Dak becomes a very bad quarterback. Now, they're losses. That's I'm throwing out there. It even says it in the title. Career in losses against winning teams. He loses by double digits, more than one score. 63% completion percentage. The yards, it's because they're down by so much. A bunch of those are garbage yards. Just like in the playoffs. Like you mentioned, was it 48-16 they were down in the fourth quarter? Yeah. And they ended with 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 1 in the first half. 1 through 3 quarters. So, and look, passing touchdown interceptions, that's the key there. Nearly a 1-to-1. And that's 1 touchdown a game in losses versus 1 interception normally, on average. Passer rating, under 80. That means you're not a great quarterback at all. And team points per game is 16.8. And the big thing is, and we all know this, get the ball out of Dak's hands. We see this with Josh Allen. Quarterbacks that are relatively reckless, your team does better and is more efficient when you take the ball out of their hands. Josh Allen through the back half of the season. Once Ken Dorsey was fired, running game picked up, they won a lot more games. They went 7-3 to end the season compared to when they had Joe Brady. When they had Ken Dorsey, it was like, they're 5-5. Not a great start. Not a great record at all. Josh Allen was playing worse, more picks, same amount of touchdowns. But when it was back to Joe Brady, it's like way more efficient. Turnovers dropped. Yards per game went up. It was good. With Dak Prescott, he's 26-24. That's 52% winning percentage when throwing 35 times or more. So when the ball's in his hands, he nearly wins as much as he wins a little bit more than he loses. But when he throws for 34 or fewer times, he wins 75% of his games. He's 48-16. And add on to the fact that when he has a rusher who rushes 100 or more times, he's significantly a better quarterback. Now, the problem with what the Cowboys have now is you have Ezekiel Elliott as your starting running back, who is rated the 3rd most overrated player on the Cowboys when we talked about that Cowboy fan survey. But Ezekiel Elliott, the last time he played for the Dallas Cowboys, he had 876 yards, 12 touchdowns. The 12 touchdowns was key, though. He had 22 touchdowns in the last 2 years with the Cowboys. A lot of those were red zone, couple yards in, hand the ball off, power through an offensive lineman. But his yards per game went down. Efficiency went down when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. When the Patriots, they used him as a utility guy. Red zone, couple nice plays here. When Ramondre Stevenson went out, Ezekiel Elliott was the RB1. But last time we saw him in the Cowboys, he got trampled as playing the center, which then, again, crazy way to end your season, playing a center, getting steamrolled. But Dak doesn't win in the biggest moments. He is the worst playoff record amongst minimum 5 games played in the playoffs, 2-5. But let's add a tiny bit more context to it. That last win was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team with a broken down offensive line and Tom Brady at 45 years old, who when a defensive lineman or a defensive player got within 50 feet of him, he would just throw it away, stick it into the ground. He did not want to get hit. So that was a kind of a scared Tom Brady that you beat with a broken down offensive line. That's one of your wins.
I'm not sure I'd ever call Tom Brady scared on the football
field.
Then
I would take a look at that 2022 season because that was very difficult to watch Tom Brady act like that.
Do you think that Jerry Jones has his eye on Trey Lance?
I think that's a bad idea regardless. I've been on this so many times before. I don't think Trey Lance is a good quarterback. 49ers swung, missed, and said, you know what? We're not going to give him a shot. We're not going to give him money. We're going to say, well, and they got him for a 4th-round pick because nobody saw him. Saw him for 4 games. But Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they saw him during training camp. They saw him during practices. And they're like,
I think they're going to give
great.
Trey Lance a really hard look in the preseason.
Yes.
If they see that he looks good, they're going to play it out with Dak and see what they can do in the offseason next year. You can't give him a franchise tag. He's protected against that. He has a no-trade clause. So he may wind up a free agent, and maybe they put their future with Trey Lance.
Jerry Jones doesn't think so. So he said on Thursday when he was asked if Prescott will leave in 2025, he goes, I don't think so. Just to be very specific, I do not think that this will be his last year with the Cowboys at all. It's pretty clear, I think. I wouldn't say it if he hadn't been clear of how much we appreciate Dak Prescott or of what Dak Prescott has meant to this team in a positive way. Well, if that was the case, you would have extended him last year. You wouldn't have waited till the end of his deal to extend him.
He's also got 2 big deals he has to do out there with Lamb and
absolutely
and Parsons.
And they could be they could be up against each other for the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Nick Bosa, I believe, has that title, or maybe it's Justin Jefferson. But regardless, CeeDee Lamb's going to get the contract. Micah Parsons is going to say, well, he got paid a lot. I want to get paid massive number 2. It's the kind of thing with the 49ers. The 49ers have been giving out contracts like it's nothing to these top-tier players, and Brandon Ayuk is kind of on the back end saying, like, well, what about me? I just had my best season. Brock Purdy loves me. That kind of Brady Edelman type of, it's the Mahomes-Kelsey connection.
Yeah.
It's now Purdy Ayuk. And if Ayuk's gone, well, the passer rating drops by 20 points to the next receiver, which I believe is Deebo Samuel. So I do think this will be Dak's last year because the fact that he's already talking about and making it seem like he's looking beyond the Cowboys, it's the same thing with most, if not every player in the NFL. They always have the same mindset. Once I really start considering retirement, then I know it's time. And I think this could be the same thing with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott of, if I'm thinking about, let's see what could be some openings. Well, maybe the Falcons will get off of Kirk. I'm just throwing that out there just because I'm going to be a hot commodity in free agency if I do it free agency. I think a lot of teams will want me.
I think that's right. I think there'll be quite a few teams that will want him.
And if he does hit free agency,
well, they want him at $60 million a year. I mean, the $55 million a year contract is this year's number, inflation.
Yeah, he has a $55 million cap at this year.
I mean, there's going to be 3 or 4% inflation, so not that hard to get to $60 million from 55.
Could he look at Pittsburgh and say, well, Mike Tomlin, good defense, building offensive line. I have George Pickens.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams he could look at.
I got Jalen Warren in the backfield. I got Najee Harris. That's not a bad idea. What about Cleveland? They already screwed up with Deshaun Watson, and he's been a horrible quarterback since he hit the Browns. Could they be looking? I mean, you could look at a couple of these places, and I think there could be a contract war because then it's Dak Prescott, draft a quarterback, or Trey Lance.
I think his best chance for a $60 million contract next year as a free agent is probably with a team that is looking to jump up into the elite tier that isn't there yet, and that would be a risk because they might not get there with Dak Prescott. And then his chances of even playing in the playoffs are not that good.
I'm going to throw
the Giants.
I was going to say
the Giants.
I'm throwing 2 teams out there, and I want to see what your reaction is. One would be the New York Giants.
Yeah.
The second one would be the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You got Kenneth Walker in the backfield, a building offensive line, JSN, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. A defense that's not that bad and only growing with Tyreek Woolen. So, and Devin Witherspoon as well.
Yeah.
I think the Seahawks, if Dak hits free agency, I think the Seahawks could look at Dak like, well, can he be our next Russell Wilson? Can he just get us? Can he just play in our system? We have a bunch of weapons. We have a good running back. Our defense is pretty good. It's not the Legion of Boom, but it's pretty good. Could Dak be Russell Wilson 2.0?
I think so.
I think
with those tools around him, particularly Metcalf and the running back Walker, who
receiver core wise, Seattle is deeper than Dallas because it goes CeeDee Lamb, a big gap to Brandon Cooks. Meanwhile, when it's on the Seahawks, it's DK Metcalf
and Tyler Lockett.
It's Tyler Lockett, then JSN. I think JSN might have a nice little, boost this year and could be over Lockett, but I like Lockett a lot anyway. So it would be DK, Lockett, and then JSN. Instead of CD, massive gap, Brandon Cooks. And also, Cowboys lost Dalton Schultz last year. Ferguson was not a bad tight end, but Dalton Schultz, we saw him on the Texans. Pretty good tight end. So much so they extended him with that big group of talent with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown. They have a lot of talent as well. But I do think that because Dak's already looking at the future and saying, well, in my career, I'm 30 years old? Not old. I'm not really that old. I think depending on the team, I might take less just to not be on the Cowboys. He gets scrutinized like nobody else. He has a tampering owner. He comes in, he's a meddling owner. He comes in, says something in an interview. For instance, like saying, well, I don't think Dak's going to be, I don't think he's going to hit free agency. And then Dak saying, well, free agency doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, well, he's probably going to be, if he does stick with the Cowboys, a good chance he's going to have a new coach.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and who might that be? Nobody knows. Could be Bill Belichick.
Maybe, but again, I don't know if Belichick will get a job just because he would need to prove to anyone who's looking for another head coach that he does not want personnel changes. He just wants to be there in coaching, which I think, and I said this recently, he can coach another 3 years if he wants to, if he just wants to be the coach. But that just doesn't seem like it's plausible based on the last 23 years that we've seen of him basically running the team as the de facto GM. Could be the case, but we'll have to see. All right, let's get into our next topic before the break. So Kirk Cousins revealed recently that the coaching staff plans to sit him during the preseason. Coming back from an Achilles injury, he wants to play in the preseason, but Raheem Morris said, nope, you're not. And in fact, Kirk Cousins told reporters on Thursday, quote, I want to play, but I think that fell on deaf ears. I think seeing live bullets and playing is helpful, but I also understand the logic behind not doing it. Do you think that the Falcons are making a mistake in not letting Kirk Cousins get some reps, brush the rust off in the preseason?
He's cleared to play. He's cleared medically to play. I don't think the Jets are going to do that with Aaron Rodgers, right? He has an Achilles. He had an Achilles injury too, although his maybe came a little earlier. His came in the fourth play of the season, so he's had a lot more time to recover. And Cousins is still, they say, recovering, but he's medically cleared to play. I think that, Morris says his limitations won't be noticeable. Well, if he can't play in a playoff game, that's pretty noticeable. And Cousins said he's relieved to be at this stage in his recovery, so he's ready to go. It's a risk reward. It's true with every player on a preseason. I mean, Belichick never let Gronk play in the preseason. The value of live snaps versus risk of injury. I think for a player like Kirk Cousins, who's 36 years old, been playing in the league for many years, the value of the preseason, maybe not so much. I mean, there's one less preseason game now. There's only 3 instead of 4. The first game of the season maybe is the 4th preseason game nowadays. And playing against the Steelers in game number 1. Maybe that makes a lot of sense, but I think there's something else going on here, and I think it's Michael Penix. I think they want to see him and see what he can do and let him play almost all the preseason and see what he looks like. And they drafted him number 8? Wasn't it number 8? We were shocked by it. Didn't think it made any sense. It pissed off Kirk Cousins, and it was widely criticized by the NFL for a guy who may wind up sitting for 4 years. Now, Michael Penix comes out, lights it up in the preseason, then you could create a quarterback controversy. It's crazy. I don't get it. The Falcons, to me, I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, I think I feel bad for Kirk Cousins. Because what did we see at the very end of the Vikings tenure? I think there was a large part of Kirk Cousins that was upset that the Vikings were probably going to draft a quarterback. So he wanted to get out there to truly be the number one with no real competition in the foreseeable future. He was coming towards the end of his deal. He wanted to make more money, obviously, try to extend his massive career earnings. By the end of his contract, he would have made, I think it's about $420 total million over the course of his career, which is absolutely nuts. I think he would be the richest player in NFL history towards the end of his tenure in the NFL. But I think he left the Vikings because they were going to draft a quarterback. He goes to the Falcons, and all of a sudden, it's very shocking. They draft Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick. Your wide receiver core is okay. Drake London's not bad. But you need more than just Drake London. Now, you have Kyle Pitts. Have we seen his true potential yet? I think probably not because of quarterback play. Taylor Heineke, a broken down Matt Ryan, and Desmond Ridder are not the kind of quarterbacks that are going to reveal your true potential, which then again, I'll preface this. When we talk about quarterbacks developing receivers, that is a part of it. Are they the same receiver when they leave the team or before they come to the team? If you really show your potential with this particular quarterback, wouldn't that quarterback develop you? I think that would be the best thing for Drake London. And I think because you have a pretty brutal schedule open the season with. Yes, you do have the Steelers. The next 3 games, Eagles, Chiefs, Buccaneers. That's a pretty tough schedule. And Kirk Cousins is going to a brand new team with brand new weapons, with a brand new head coach, brand new offensive line, which, by the way, is ranked 2nd in the league. However, it is still brand new. Brand new weapons all around. Unless they expect him to run it 24 times a game and have him pass 25 or so, if your offense can be that efficient, more power to them. But if you expect Kirk Cousins to go out there the 30-plus times and not expect him to be turnover-prone because of the lack of development with his receivers, because he was rehabbing that injury, I think this will be a massive mistake. Because also, their receivers and their talent is already so young. It's Jordan Love with the Green Bay Packers. Once he developed a lot of rapport with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, oh my God, the last 10 games were like, this guy's a top-tier quarterback. To end the year, he finished with 18 touchdowns, 1 pick. I believe in the last 8 games of the season. That's ridiculous. Now, will Kirk Cousins come out of the gate and be like 2 touchdowns, 9 picks, or 2 touchdowns, 6 picks like Daniel Jones or Jimmy G? I don't think so, because their offensive lines aren't that, or the Daniel Jones and Jimmy G's offensive lines were not great to begin with. Falcons have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But I do think that chemistry is crucial. Tom Brady was out there during COVID on high school practice fields, technically breaking the law, just to get timing with his receivers, because he understood that continuity, consistency, understanding the chemistry between you and your receiver is vital to a successful offense and a successful team through and through. There's also one more benefit. You play in arguably the worst division in the NFL. So maybe, because you play against, I'm going to call it, you play 4 games against pretty poor teams. I think the Buccaneers could be interesting depending, on how Baker performs. So we're just going to say 4 games against teams that are not that great. 2 against the Saints, 2 against the Panthers. You have a little bit of a leeway there. You can go 4-2, and I'm saying that's successful. You could go 6-0 because you have the best quarterback in the draft. You have the best in the division, best running back in the division. Bijan Robinson's a great running back. Arguably the best tight end in the division.
Their defense is pretty good, too.
Defense is also relatively good. Yeah. You probably have one of the best safeties in the NFL.
What do you think about my argument? They're going to have a joint practice with the Dolphins, so they're going to have a lot more live plays, including those joint practices, than some teams might have who only have the 3 preseason games. Don't you think? Do you think they really want to taking a hard look at Penix?
I think it's really unfortunate. And yeah, I do think they are going to. I think just like the Cowboys are going to do with Trey Lance in the preseason, they're going to give him basically every single, rep and every single snap in the preseason instead of, having Cooper Rush and him, go throw for throw, rep for rep. I think Michael Penix is going to get a very nice looking at. Now, Raheem Morris said, that's down the line. We're going to worry about that down the line. People are saying this might be a 1-year deal for Kirk Cousins. 1 year and he's done. They're going to make room for Michael Penix to come in, which honestly, it would not
Do
be
you think
shocked.
it creates a quarterback controversy if Penix looks really good in the
I think just
preseason?
drafting him creates some sort of controversy. It may not be like a Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. But I do think it's like, well, Kirk, your job is not as secure as everybody's thinking. Your job is not secure at all. You thought so, but we just drafted your replacement already. Didn't have a single snap, and his replacement's already breathing down his throat.
It's crazy. I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. They're only making it worse, I think.
It creates unnecessary pressure for a quarterback that is trying to still be a successful quarterback in the NFL. Unnecessary pressure. So, what are you going to do? But Kirk Cousins, I actually feel very bad for him.
Yeah.
He thought his job was secure. He moved away from a team that was going to draft his replacement to eventually a team who did draft his replacement.
Who do you think will win that first game against the Steelers?
If Kirk Cousins plays, and we're not saying play a full
He's going to be
preseason
rusty.
game.
He's going to be rusty.
Right.
He won't have taken a snap in live play.
I'm going to give it to the Falcons
Since
just
since
because
week
I don't
8.
think the Steelers are going to be very good.
Since week 8 last year.
Yeah.
He will not have had a live snap. Yeah.
I think I'm going to give it to the Falcons because I think the Falcons are all-around better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
And
I'm giving it to the Steelers.
I think Kirk Cousins is better than Justin Fields. I think Kirk Cousins is better than Russell Wilson anyway. So if Kirk Cousins just out on the field and doesn't perform like a Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, any one of these poor quarterbacks, if he's better than Desmond Ridder, I think they're going to win the game.
I think it'll be a very close game.
I agree with you. This may be, my guess would be, I'm not looking at the point spread right now, but I think when it comes closer to week 1, this may be a -2.5 for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think it'll be a full 3 points, which is you get during home field advantage anyway. I think it'll be a neutral field, half-point favor Steelers. Because I do think it could be just a very evenly bet game. But I do think ultimately, who's the better quarterback? And normally when you go with who's the better quarterback, you're more times right than you are wrong. Kirk Cousins is better than Russell Wilson, or Kirk Cousins is better than Justin Fields. I'm going with the quarterback in that week. All right, we're going to take a break, but coming up, Bill Barnwell says that Brock Purdy could be worth $65 million, as well as Brady, Gronk, Mahomes, Kelsey. Who did ESPN rank as the better quarterback and the better tight end in the 2000s? We'll talk about that right after this.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. It is great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of today's show. So this is something, to say the least. Bill Barnwell of ESPN recently wrote that Brock Purdy's contract value could be upwards of $65 million. Take a look at the full quote. Quote, if he continues this level of play, my best estimate is that a Purdy deal would come in around 5 years and $325 million for an average of $65 million per season. It's always possible the quarterback can take some semblance of reduced salary to make life easier for his team, but after making just $2.6 million over the first 3 years of his existing deal, I'm not sure why he would be willing to cut the 49ers any slack. It's a fair point. Brock Purdy has been absolutely incredible since he was drafted, since he took over for Jimmy G around week 11, I want to say. During the Dolphins game, we saw him come onto the scene and be like, who the hell is this guy? Went undefeated up until the Eagles game where he got hurt. And then, the story continues with Brock Purdy having to dominate the NFL since coming into the league, being Mr. Irrelevant. I want to know, though, do you think when it comes time to doing it, the 49ers should make Brock Purdy the richest quarterback, and have the richest contract in NFL history?
Depends on what happens this year, I think. I think that has a bearing on it. I mean, you look at what he's done in 2 years. He took him to the NFC Championship game in his first year. And he got hurt there. He might have made the Super Bowl there, but he got hurt, and they had no quarterback really. I mean, he wound up back out on the field and couldn't even throw the ball. All he could do was hand it off, and the Eagles knew that, and it was a relatively easy win for them. The second year, he took him to the Super Bowl. Okay, so his record as a starter, 17-4, not too bad. You look at. Others that make or win the Super Bowl this year, if he does that this year, he's going to be in Burrow Lawrence territory for sure, and he will get he'll get over $60 million just because of the inflation. Right, next there'll be a whole full year here, and those contracts are going to have inflation on them. If it's going to be number one, it will be over $60 million. I mean, you look at his deal, he's one of the greatest bargains in NFL history, and the biggest bargain in sports right now. 4 years, $3.7 million contract, $77,000 guaranteed, Nate. Wow, that's big money. He has a 71.4 QBR over the past 2 seasons. Only Mahomes and Allen are better. There's some skepticism maybe because he was a 7th-round pick. He's played with the number one set of playmakers in the league the past 2 years. You got McCaffrey, Samuels, Kittle, Ayuk, Trent Williams on the offensive line. You got the best offensive coach in football. So is it all him or is it the environment? His performance may be a product of the environment. If he gets $60 million, the 49ers are probably going to have to part ways with some of their key players. So that's an issue. And I think you may be seeing that with Brandon Ayuk, right? He's having a hard time getting a contract extension. They're thinking ahead. They signed this Pearsall guy as a rookie. They're hoping that he can play well, and they're going to hold out on Ayuk. And if Pearsall looks really good, they probably won't give Ayuk the big contract because they know they got to pay Brock Purdy next year. So, is Brock Purdy worth it? Well, he led the NFL in yards per attempt, net yards per attempt, touchdown percentage, and passer ratings. He does well in the 3rd and long. He has a 56.6 QBR. That's 6th in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. When the pass is expected, 75% of the time when the pass is expected, he only ranks behind Mahomes and Allen. He's first in the NFL with 10.5 yards per attempt and first down. He leads the NFL in yards per attempt when trailing. He has a 97.5 QBR on the deep pass. So, he looks pretty good to me. You look at other quarterbacks who were good in their first 2 years who really didn't wind up doing much. Nick Foles, Dante Culpepper, Ken O'Brien for the Jets quite a long time ago. RG3, but RG3 wound up getting hurt a lot. So, it may not be a very good comparison, but I think Purdy winds up getting the money.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I do think Dak Prescott and maybe Jordan Love's deal, whichever gets signed first, and what the number is, will determine Brock Purdy's contract. Because really, it's Jordan Love. That's the next guy. Jordan Love and Dak Prescott. Dak already got an extension, but Jordan Love's first extension, that will set what Brock Purdy gets because everybody can understand. Brock Purdy is better than Jordan Love. I had him, I believe, as my 4th best quarterback in the NFL, maybe 4th or 5th. I forgot. I think it was 4th, 1 spot above C.J. Stroud. But what I do think that is blatantly obvious, the 49ers are one of the deepest offensive teams in the NFL, which greatly benefits Brock Purdy. Now, Brock Purdy does his job beautifully, better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But still, Jimmy G had very similar amounts of success with the San Francisco 49ers and looked very similar once CMC got to the 49ers. He was putting up very similar numbers than Brock Purdy did when Jimmy G went down. Brock Purdy came in, it's like, oh, It's a lot similar, especially when you have that guy, number 23 in the backfield. But I will give Brock Purdy a lot of credit. He reads the field incredibly well. Pre-snap, he does a very good job. Getting the ball to the right guy, he does that with basically perfect execution day in and day out. He's done some things some of his predecessors, in the case of Joe Montana, Steve Young, has never done before. He was able to do some of those things. Brock Purdy is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He excels at a very high level. But there is a massive filter. He plays for the best number 2 offensive coach in the NFL. He has the best running back, total package, best halfback, running back, guy in the backfield in the NFL, whatever you want to call him. He has, when healthy, he has the best left tackle in the NFL. He's got a bunch of the best, the deepest, the best, the fastest, the all-around greatest, the second best. He has a lot of those best. So the level of adversity that he has to go through is not much. When Trent Williams is out, massive problems. When he plays a defense that makes him deal with a lot of pressure, definitely problems come up. When he trails in games, you can bring up the highest yards per attempt when he trails. Yeah, how about the fact that he has a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, 9-9. He doesn't trail that often. He nearly has the most has the same amount of attempts when tied and trailing. But it basically doubles in when he's winning because the 49ers are so good defensively and offensively that they don't really trail that much. So when we see him trail, it's like, doesn't look so good. But in the playoffs, we saw a different Brock Purdy. We saw a couple Mahomesian plays. When he needs to make a play, he doesn't throw it. He runs it, which were some very killing plays, especially against the Green Bay Packers. Now, in the playoffs, we've seen this consistently. He gets very lucky. Very lucky. These are not plays where it's just like, okay, he made the right read, but it was a great pass breakup. No. These are plays where they're in the hands of defenders and they drop them. Where he makes the wrong read and the defense drops the ball. He nearly had 2 interceptions against the Green Bay Packers, one of which could have been a pick 6 to, I believe, Darnell Savage, but that wasn't the case. He gets the Brandon Ayuk tip against the Detroit Lions. Very lucky. Like, some of these plays, it's like you're scratching your head like, how the hell could this happen?
Yeah, well, I go to this scenario. In the Super Bowl, in the fourth quarter, behind.
Yeah.
Went down the field, put his team ahead. Defense didn't play that well. The Kansas City tied it up. Brock Purdy goes down there in overtime, gives his team the lead again. The defense doesn't play so well. Kansas City goes down the field and wins the game. He had the lead twice in the biggest game of the year, and they didn't win. So I think that says a lot about his composure in the biggest game, the biggest stage. He came up big. It wasn't him that cost him the Super Bowl. It was the defense.
Well, I'll also say that I've brought this up before, so I want to see if we do have the clips. Some of these plays, is this the play I'm talking about? No, that's not the play I'm talking about. Yeah, Jimmy G, we always, criticize Jimmy Garoppolo for missing this very easy throw, I think relatively easy throw. But Brock Purdy had a couple of those throws too, like this one. This is a wide open throw that he just completely misses. It's a very similar one.
But he's a better deep thrower than Jimmy G.
But what about another one? I agree. What about another one?
Not when he had
missed
pressure.
Throw. But still, what about Jimmy Garoppolo? Let's bring his throw up again. He's getting pressured by 2 sides.
Yeah. Well, he missed the throw.
I think let's be fair, though. And I've said this before. People don't understand it. I always get comments about this. So I commended Josh Allen, and people were saying I was bashing him down. Brock Purdy is a much better version of Jimmy Garoppolo. He does what Jimmy Garoppolo does within Kyle Shanahan's system, just better. I put him number 4 in my top 10 QB list. I just said a bunch of nice things about him, which I truly believe. But there is a massive filter, and to be oblivious to that filter is disingenuous. You're not seeing it clearly. You are in the smoke screen. You can't see it because you're inside of it.
Yeah.
Having that much talent and then signing him to a $65 million deal, which, by the way, it could be inflation. Also, these TV deals are skyrocketing that salary cap.
Yeah, the cap is going up.
George Kittle's getting older. Debo's going to want another extension. Ayuk's 1 foot out the door already.
McCaffrey's
Christian
still there.
McCaffrey, he's gotten healthier, but injury history, getting older as well. Running backs don't last as long as some of these other types of players. What happened? What if Ricky Pearsall can't do what Brandon Ayuk can do? What if he is a lesser Brandon Ayuk? You lose production.
They may give him a contract.
What happens if you can't find another George Kittle? What happens when you're off? What happens when Trent Williams retires and you can't find a true replacement for Brock Purdy on the left side? What happens when things go wrong? What happens when the defense, Nick Bosa, God forbid, gets hurt again? The defense dwindles a little bit. You go up against a team that can pressure you more. Can Brock Purdy overcome that?
Well,
He
they're
does
going to
not
have, you know what? They've got one more year to watch him. The sample size, he's 17-4 as a starter. That looks pretty good.
Absolutely.
It's relatively small sample size. It's a 2 years. They've got a whole full year to watch him. I guarantee you. They go out there and they go deep into the playoffs. He plays well. They make it to the Super Bowl. Win or lose, he's going to be a $60 million quarterback next time.
I completely agree. If we're talking about quarterbacks who should set the market, Brock Purdy is definitely one of those quarterbacks.
And he's
back-to-back NFC Championship games and made a Super Bowl in 2 years. Not even 2 years.
You look at the contracts that have been given. All he can do is sit back and smile and say, "My payday is coming."
They're doing the work for me. I don't need to fight this.
Yeah.
They're setting the market for me.
Right. Particularly if he has that great year next year, which she should have. This is really the 49ers' year. They've got to do it this year. They've got all these players together, and they have the salaries are manageable now. It's not going to be that way next year.
I'll also say this. The 49ers have a history of making their quarterbacks the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Jimmy Garoppolo, at a little over $25 million annually, was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Back in, 2017, I want to say? 2018? Highest paid quarterback.
Yeah,
49ers.
Look what's happened since
Now it's Brock
2018.
Purdy's turn.
$25 million, it's more than doubled.
More than doubled.
Yeah.
And so would $65 million shock me? No.
I'd say it's more 60. I don't think 65
Once
is a
again,
little high.
it depends on Dak Prescott and Jordan Love. Mostly Jordan Love, because he'll be getting his first extension.
Yeah.
It's not like a raise.
I think he's going to get. I see
on
him
annual
getting
for, like,
kind
Dak
of.
Prescott.
I see him getting Tua money.
Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Jordan Love has
he's-
already had more success in significantly less time.
Small sample size, very small. I mean, he sat on the bench.
He's
for
had
3
more
years.
success, though.
He only had.
He has more playoff wins with less talent
Okay, but he's had.
against harder.
But he really only played at an elite level in the last half of last season.
And already proved to be a better and more efficient quarterback with less talent.
I don't think he'll get Trevor Lawrence or.
I don't think either. But
Burrow money.
But what if we?
It's going to be less.
What if we
I think
see
it's going to
like,
be in the Tua range.
What if we see just like what's the highest number you count? Infinity in one. What if we see that where it's like, well, I got 53.1. I'll get 53.2 million. How about that? So he becomes the third highest paid quarterback in the league with 53.2.
Something like that.
That's something that could happen. Could I see him matching Burrow, but not Burrow, but because of Trevor Lawrence? Yes, I could see that. Because now they have the same amount of playoff wins. And Love has more playoff wins than Tua does. And fewer appearances, too.
I think it'll be maybe a little hair above Tua, but not much.
I agree with that. All right, let's get into a fun topic. We always like to do these fun topics, and we love lists on the show. So how about this one? So ESPN has been doing this thing where they rank the top 100 players of the, or I guess for this, they did the top 25 players of the 21st century. Tom Brady, number 1. Mahomes, number 2. Gronk, number 13. Travis Kelce, 14. Now, this is a big debate because everyone's saying that Mahomes has already passed Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time.
Not in my mind.
People are saying Travis Kelce has surpassed Gronk as the greatest tight end of all time. But I don't know. Do you have any problem with ESPN ranking Gronk higher than Kelce and Mahomes and Brady higher than Mahomes?
Not at all. I think it's 100% accurate. You look at Tom Brady; he's got 7 Super Bowl wins. Mahomes 3. You look at the wins, the career stats. Brady holds the record for career passing yards and TDs. He's a 15-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro. He has the NFL MVP several times. He won the Super Bowl MVP 4 or 5 times. He's definitely number one. Mahomes has got a long way to go to surpass Tom Brady. And in head-to-head competition against Tom Brady, Mahomes has come up second place every time. He lost in the Super Bowl to him. He lost in the AFC Championship game to him. So I see Tom Brady still quite a ways ahead of Patrick Mahomes.
What about Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski?
I just think Gronk and Brady, they have the record for TDs in the playoffs, right? TDs in the playoffs, that's where it matters the most. They're the number one combo with some huge number of TDs. I can't remember the exact number, but they broke it. They broke that record when Gronk went to the Buccaneers and played with Brady.
That's not the playoffs, it's the Super Bowl.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So,
it still goes to...
that's the biggest game. So I still think Gronk's ahead of him.
Okay. Well...
And you know what? Gronk had more injuries than... Kelsey's had his share of injuries.
Yeah.
But Gronk had some pretty bad injuries and missed a lot of games.
He did miss a lot of games.
And he's still, you look at his stats, right up there among the very best tight ends for a career. So he's not only... has the stats. He's a tough customer, too. Very tough.
I'm going to argue this until the end of the earth because I heard it since I started following football, and I'm only 21, going on 22 soon enough years old. And since I really got into the NFL, and since I really started to argue who's the best quarterback between if it was Manning, Drew Brees, all-time Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, all I heard was, well, Montana's 4-0. Even when Brady had 4 Super Bowls. When Brady had 5, it was still, well, Montana went to 4 and won 4. It's very Jordan LeBron-esque. Well, how about I give the same argument to Patrick Mahomes? Has he won 4 Super Bowls? He's won 3. So if I'm keeping it fair with the same argument with the greatest quarterback of all time, I'm going to keep it fair with the next upcoming greatest quarterback of all time. Some people, I assume, would try to argue, and rightfully so. Mahomes has been great. Has he won 4 Super Bowls? Then he isn't even number 2. Yes, I understand this is the 2000s and 2000s only. But if we're talking about all time, which a lot of people are already arguing, it's Brady 1, Montana 2, Mahomes 3. Because has Patrick Mahomes won 3 Super Bowls? No. He does have a loss in one, though, to Tom Brady. So it's going to be very difficult to argue. Because, and this is a little bit unfair.
Super Bowl wins.
He does have 3. I'm saying, does he have 4?
No.
Montana has 4.
Well, Montana has 4.
Brady had 5. People are saying Montana because he was 4-0 is still better than Brady all time because he has more.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. Brady has 7. So when you talk about who has won the most Super Bowls and you're talking about everything, including franchises, you start with Tom Brady, then franchises. That's how this goes. Brady is a 70% win percentage in the Super Bowl. He nearly made it to half the amount of Super Bowls than he played with the New England Patriots.
If it wasn't for the Mannings, he'd probably have 2 more. He would have had 9.
And if it wasn't for Bill Belichick, he very well could be undefeated.
Actually, he might have had 3. He could have had.
Which means he would be undefeated.
He lost to Eli twice.
Yep.
And he lost in the AFC Championship to Peyton. So
how about this? No, throw Peyton out of there. What about if Belichick puts in his most reliable defensive player in Malcolm Butler, and then you lose to Nick Foles? Do you not go undefeated in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. You know what? I'm not going to give the 2011 Super Bowl, well, Brady should have won it. No. Eli Manning set a record in the postseason for most yards. It wasn't some sort of the Mario Manningham play is crazy, but it's not crazy luck. It was a great throw. Great catch.
A great throw.
Now, the unfortunate part of that Super Bowl was the Wes Welker drop. So but that's not luck. That's just poor catch, poor play, whatever the case may be. Poor timing. I'll include that and not really give true blame because it's very difficult to put that. But when it comes to Brady and Mahomes shouldn't be even number 2 in totality of the history. So definitely number 2 on the 2000 list, I'm fine with. Montana, he didn't really play at all in the 2000s. So I got no problem with that. Zero problem with Mahomes being number 2, but he should not be over Brady because he doesn't have enough Super Bowl wins. He doesn't have enough success over a long period of time. The Gronk-Kelce one, that's the interesting thing. Gronk does have one more Super Bowl win. But unlike Kelsey, Gronk is the definition of a tight end. Kelsey is a receiver. Everyone classifies him as a receiver.
That's a very good point.
Gronk
is an outstanding blocker.
Kelsey has been taken off the field as recently as this past season during crucial running plays because he is not an effective blocker. Gronk during 2017 and especially 2018, when he wasn't hurt, was a blocker. So the fact that the definition of a tight end is too small for a lineman, too big for a receiver, that's basically what it is. Your position is to block, to catch, to score. That's Rob Gronkowski. Because he is
it's a
arguably...
very good point that he was a superb blocker.
So if we talk about...
And he didn't mind it. He didn't mind being a blocker.
Not. Absolutely not.
He relished it. He did a great job at it. He took it very seriously. He knew how important that was. He did a fantastic job blocking.
So and when I talk about the greatest tight end of all time, I'm including Gronk. For me, that's the big nail in the coffin. Mm-hmm. Gronk is a better blocker than Travis Kelce is.
Tony Gonzalez was on this list. He was number 24.
I got no problem with that. Tony Gonzalez was one of...
Never won a Super Bowl.
That is true. And that's the unfortunate part about his career. Now this list is filled with also a couple question marks. Peyton Manning 4, Randy Moss 5, Calvin Johnson 6. I would put Ray Lewis, and that's difficult. I would probably put Ray Lewis above J.J. Watt, personally. Ray Lewis was... I mean, that early Ravens defense... You were mortified if you played that. I mean, think about it. The 2000 Super Bowl, was that against the Giants? They averaged, I think, 11 points given up, or maybe even fewer than that.
They were awesome that year.
I don't think they allowed a passing touchdown. They may have not allowed a touchdown at all. I think the only touchdown that came was on a kickoff. So I think that 2000s Ravens defense is one of the top 3 greatest defenses of all time. So I think it's... Ray Lewis definitely deserves to be in the top 10. He's number 8. So, yeah.
What do you think about Aaron Rodgers at 9?
I got no problem with that. He's one of, if not the greatest regular season quarterback in the NFL. When it comes to playoffs, that's a different story.
MVP.
Yeah, no. When it comes to playoffs, that's a completely different story.
Charles Woodson at 12?
Yeah, they allowed one touchdown in the entire playoff run. It was a rushing touchdown. Which is crazy when you think about it. That 2000s Ravens defense allowed 1 total touchdown on offense.
Yeah.
Large part due to Ray Lewis.
How about Charles Woodson at 12?
I got no problem with that. Most of this I don't have a problem with.
You think Charles Woodson ahead of Rob Gronkowski?
Hey, Charles Woodson was...
He was good.
He was a tremendous player. Yeah. He won Defensive Player of the Year back in 2009. How many cornerbacks are winning DPOY?
Brett Favre at 17?
Yeah, no, I'd get. Like I said, not a massive problem.
Third in wins from 2000 to 2010, 104.
I'm happy LaDainian Tomlinson is over Marshall Faulk. A little fun fact about me: LT is my favorite player.
Yeah,
favorite player all time. Second favorite. He actually, LT was the player who got me into football. Mm-hmm. So there's a little tidbit, little thing you know about me. But yeah, overall, Gronk's better than Kelsey because he's a better tight end. And Tom Brady is arguably he's a top 3 player of all time. You definitely argue for number 1. You could definitely argue for number 1. That's a solid argument.
We got his picture right up in back of us here, and we got his jersey hanging up too. It says it all.
Well, I'll say this: he is the clutchest quarterback in the NFL. His 6 Super Bowls came from 6 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter and overtime. You can't be more clutch.
I'm so sorry he's retired.
Well, the 49ers tried to call him about this past season.
Yeah.
So he didn't pick up. We'll see him, though, broadcasting. The first game, I believe, is Cleveland-Dallas week 1. I think that's the game of the week, so it's, 4:25 on Fox? So there you go. You'll be able to hear him call a Dallas Cowboy game.
That'll be fun to watch.
All right, but that does wrap it up for today's episode of the Harvey Hour. We always thank you for the constant support, as always. My name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We're your hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Night, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift